Hello and welcome to Talking Live. We are talking about a difficult topic, believe it or not, women and finances. And I'm so thrilled to have Robin Hauser. She's an award-winning filmmaker, and she just completed a new film called Savvy, which addresses this very tough topic. Robin, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Robbie. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
I found you on an interview you were doing with Gretchen Carlson, and I was so compelled by your story. I just had to meet you. This topic was personal for you too.
It was. I think this film and this topic is personal to any woman who finds herself suddenly in charge of her own finances, and so yes, it was.
Tell me a little bit more about what got you interested in this topic, and more importantly, educating women about how to handle finances and get comfortable with this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I had been, I was responsible for my own finances, of course, when I got out of college and was working. And in fact, I was a stockbroker for a couple of years right out of business school. And then I got married and I had two kids. And I sort of, like many women, we had division of labor. And I was not the one really responsible for finances, which is perfectly fine in many, relationships, not a problem at all. But it was when I got divorced 24 years later that I realized, I probably should have. I wish that I had paid more attention or been more involved in finances, and so I found myself, starting over, and it's very empowering, I'll tell you that. But I really needed to sit down, and even with a master's degree in business, I had to suddenly say, okay, wow, like I need to look into investing, and I need to look into, how to save, and what if I want to buy a house and that type of thing. So the more I looked into it, and then there's a certain amount of shame involved too, right? Like, wow, I should know more about all this now that I'm responsible for myself. And I think that what's really frightening to me, the more I researched it, is that this is not just something that, oh yes, our grandmothers were like that or our mothers were like that, but in fact, millennials are more likely than any other generation to abdicate financial decisions to somebody else in their life. Often that somebody else, of course, is their male partner. Although it happens in same-sex relationships too. It's fascinating. Why is that?
Yeah. Why is that? I mean, that's so interesting to me. And I hear so many stories as a therapist. One story that stands out is a woman who's highly educated. I mean, every single Ivy League degree you can imagine, including business school. And she very honestly spoke about how she didn't want to have to deal with the finances. She just didn't want to look at it. It wasn't comfortable for her, which I found so interesting. And other women who really have a very vintage idea of what a relationship looks like. And that includes not handling the money in their relationships.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's complicated, which is why I wanted to make a film about it, right? I don't think it's just say one thing. It's not an easy fix. I think there's a little bit of what I call the Cinderella effect, right? Women like to be taken care of. And I don't know if that's partly biological. I think it probably is, but we like to be taken care of. And so if we find ourselves in a relationship where somebody else can handle that, money, which sometimes just seems stressful, and in fact it is, it's the number one sense of stress in humans, right? You've probably heard that too.
Yeah. In fact, there's a new category in terms of psychology and psychiatry looking at financial stressors as causing mental health issues.
Exactly.
And I don't know that we ever looked at it in that way before, but when you think about it, money has to do with reality, and reality is tough to deal with.
Well, that's interesting. And yes, and money also has to do, to get into the psychology of it, when we think about ourselves for the future, right? Our future selves are perfect. We all imagine that, in the future, we are going to be better people, and we're going to have our act together, and we're going to have saved more, and we're going to lose weight, and we're going to be more athletic and better partners. And so when you think of yourself as perfect in the future, we don't necessarily take care of that future person. So that means that we're not as incentivized to save. We don't worry about retirement, that type of thing, right? And yet the percentage of women that live below the poverty level in retirement is huge. I was reading the other day that average retirement savings, right, for women, and remember that we're living longer and longer, right, is about $738,000. Only 9% of women in the United States have saved $300,000 for retirement. So that's a problem. And as we live longer, and we do live longer than men, 8 out of 10 women are going to be solely responsible for their financial well-being at some point in their life, right? And so we better know how to handle money. There's also a lot of sort of missed opportunities when we are not the ones that are involved in money. And you were asking why, why do we do that? So I mentioned the Cinderella effect. There's also this gender role. Our society, and not just our society, but a lot of Western society suggests that money is masculine and that that's sort of man's territory. And so whether we, as in heterosexual relationships, are being careful not to emasculate our partners, or, we just want to tiptoe lightly around that because, that's sort of his job and I don't want to step on his toes type thing.
I could certainly speak for me, and I certainly have had tons of issues when it comes to money. In fact, people will often ask me, what would you advise your younger self? And what I say all the time is, I wish I was more financially literate. I was in denial. I lived in accordance with magical thinking that, you just have to make good choices and then you'll have a financially abundant lifestyle. And I deliberately made a choice not to have to deal with that because that helped me feel taken care of. And it was like that fantasy world. That's a weird thing. It robs you of your confidence, but helps you to feel good maybe in the moment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I would say that the American financial industry, and probably likely beyond the borders of America as well, isn't exactly conducive to women, right? It was made by men for men, not intentionally to block women out. We just weren't really in the thought process, right? And so tons of acronyms, and when you hear them talking about money and Wall Street, look, the Wall Street symbol is a raging, very well endowed bull, right?
Yeah, it's not a ballerina, that's for sure.
No, it's not. It's not. And I kind of hate the fact that the defiant young woman that stands outside there too is a girl. Like, why shouldn't she be a strong, powerful woman, right? There's something, I think they're on the right track by having that sort of defiant young woman there, but she's a girl. She's a prepubescent girl, which is kind of weird too. But yeah, so I think there are a lot of reasons why we do this. And I think that there's an intimidation factor. And then I think that when you get to a certain point in life and you think, well, I really don't know anything about investing, or when I go into our financial advisor, because there are many husbands that want their wives to get involved, many partners that want their wives to get involved.
Yes.
And they sit down in this financial planning session, and it's intimidating. And the acronyms, they're not sure. And it's almost the shame. You don't want to say, well, wait, can somebody explain what compounding interest is to me? Right?
Yes. I said to one of my patients recently, she's like, well, I don't want to ask a question because I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, do you have to be an expert in everything? Like, it is okay to not know. I certainly tell my kids, especially my daughter, know about finances. It will help you feel better about yourself, because the more that you can feel in control of that area, the happier you will be. And I think it really influences what choices women make in terms of partners, what careers they want for themselves. How do you think we make a difference in this area?
Well, I think number one is by starting with what you're doing. We need to talk to our daughters and our sons, right, about the importance of managing personal finances, being savvy, being aware, getting involved. And the reason I say and our sons is because, someday our sons are going to be likely, married or, with a partner. And whomever that partner is, you want to build a transparent relationship with money. So
Yeah.
you may ideally you have a situation where everybody in that relationship understands how much debt the other person has, how much money they have, how much they both make. I mean, there are many women out there that you could ask and they actually could not tell you how much their husband even makes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or who the mortgage is with. Well, what happens if suddenly, God forbid, but what happens if suddenly, the person that you're relying on is hit by a bus and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly it's all on you to handle it? I mean, that's scary if you don't know where just the basic things are. Do you have a will? Do you, know where that will is? Did you execute the will? Where's your money? How much do you owe? How much do you have? All these things are so important. And of course, in the middle of a traumatic situation like that is really not the time that you also want to have to be scrambling to figure out, that you didn't have your affairs in order. So
Mm-hmm.
these are just like at basic things. And, other women suddenly find themselves divorced. And if you're not financially savvy and you go through divorce, it doesn't matter how fabulous your attorney might be. Divorce attorneys are not financial accountants, most of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you also need somebody to say, wait, don't necessarily just keep the house and take the house. And the pressure's on the woman to take the house because maybe you've got the kids, you don't want to disrupt the family type thing. But you know what? All assets are not created equal. And a house is not the same thing as getting the stock portfolio because the house has a mortgage and has upkeep and has property
Mm-hmm.
taxes. And so these are things that women need to know and they need to understand these things. And I say women, really, this could happen in a same-sex male partnership too, right? We just
Mm-hmm.
all need to be responsible with and understand money.
And this is something you went through firsthand. So, what was the most important financial information or approach you needed to get comfortable with after your divorce?
Well, I really wish that I had met some of the amazing women that I know now, while I was going through the divorce process, just because I didn't necessarily understand everything about, say, real estate finances, and so I had to trust that that my lawyer, understood that and understood what was best for me. Um, yeah, I can't talk too much about it. I can't be too specific, but I wish that I wish that I had the allies, the people that I know, both men and women, in the financial industry, and the knowledge that I have now. I really wish that I had when I was going through divorce. And I will tell you that there are some amazing women out there that are their whole mission is to help women go through divorce so that they can understand and understand what their options are. The other thing to talk about, and this is not personal experience, but financial abuse is something that is
Mm,
prevalent. And financial abuse does not necessarily mean that you're in lower income bracket with somebody who's stealing from you blatantly. It can also be people that make a couple hundred $1 million a year, and
mhm,
women or a spouse that doesn't have access to funds or is controlled about how much they can spend or
mhm.
doesn't know anything about the money. I mean, there's financial abuse comes in all sorts of forms, and there are many women who just can't even break away. They might be
Mhm.
physically being abused, but they can't get away because they're not financially independent. They
Right.
literally don't have the money to get away and to get somewhere safe or to start over or to put their own money down for a rental apartment just to get away. So it's a frightening situation. Yeah.
And I even think it transcends just, looking at dollars and cents. It has to do with self-esteem. If you are not knowledgeable about finances or feel like you can make decisions that help you to survive, that leaves a woman in a very vulnerable position and, quite frankly, not liking herself as much as she would if she knew she'd be fine with or without her partner if something goes wrong for
Oh,
whatever reason,
absolutely.
divorce, death, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. I think it's a horribly stressful situation to be in, right? If you realize that you're so dependent on somebody else for finances, and not just because somebody is the breadwinner, but because they have the knowledge and you don't, because there isn't
That's right.
transparency. And by the way, sometimes there's plenty of transparency The woman just doesn't want to know. She's too busy. Women are busy. Women have taken care of the kids and they're trying, maybe they have their own job. And, one more thing, it's just as easy. Do you want to come with to the meeting with our financial planner? We're going to talk about the stock portfolio. I can't, I have to.
And it could be unpleasant.
Yeah.
It could be unpleasant news. Like it's kind of easier to just kind of walk around in la la land until it's not.
And that's right. Really, and there's that shame element too, right? Like,
yes,
if I should know, I know I should know this, but I don't.
Did you ever hear the study that people would rather walk around naked than share their bank statements?
I love it.
That's true. With all the body issues out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some crazy statistics out there. Student loan debt. I mean, I think in the United States, $1.7 trillion of student loan debt. So think about it. These, kids getting out of college, so well-educated, about to start their life with mounds of debt. How did they get there? And it brings up a whole different thing about some of these private loans, student loans, and the ridiculous rates that they're charging. But if you don't know any better, and if your parents don't know any better, all you're trying to do is provide for your child to go to college, right?
Right.
Same thing with credit cards. There's a scene in Savvy documentary about a young woman who, as a first-generation American, her parents are from the Dominican Republic, and she gets a full ride scholarship to Brown University. But she still has to pay for books, and she has to pay for clothes, and she has to sort of, she wants to fit in and look like the rest of her, colleagues and college friends. And she walks out of class one day and there's a big tent set up saying, here, free credit card. She's like, well, I'm sure I don't qualify. No, absolutely qualify. Nobody explained to her what compounding interest is. The statement comes and says what you owe, which, as we all know, is only a fraction of what you really owe. She ended up with over $20,000 of debt.
Yeah, it's really, really scary. What do you want people to take away from your film?
I would like to motivate people, both men and women, to become more financially savvy. And that sounds so dry and boring, but it's not. So to understand, to understand that even with $5, $10 a week or a month, you can invest and watch your money grow, right? There's so many accessible apps now that you can use that can help you get involved in managing your money, growing your money, or Acorn, how do you save money? These type of things. But I really want people to be excited about it, to be excited about social impact investing, or just to be able to have the courage to turn to their partner and say, hey, I would like to know a little bit more. How much is our mortgage and how much do we have in the savings account? And what would happen if you suddenly didn't come home tonight? That type of thing. So I really want to empower women.
I think too, I'm sorry to overstep. I think it's a problem with Zoom where it's hard to come in at that right time. But I do think that the more that we talk about it and make it okay not to know, and to go from not knowing if that's where you're at to knowing a little bit and feeling good about that, if we can help women and encourage women in that direction, I think we're on the right track. It's so interesting that in my practice, the women that were most savvy about money were taught by their fathers.
Yes, interesting, isn't it? And that's right, because likely in their father's relationship, he was in charge, right, of the finances. And that is absolutely with the research that I've uncovered as well, is that they'll say, oh no, my father, he sat me down. I remember my father, who was an investment counselor. I came home from babysitting and I was so excited I had $7. And not only did he say, okay, what are you going to put, this is how much you need to put aside for taxes. And what are you going to give to charity? And that was, and I was like, oh boy, really? I only have like $4.50 now. But that was a really important lesson. And I think there are probably many people out there that know what it's like the first time you get a paycheck and you see all this money taken out for, what's FICA? What's it? What's, and all the money that's taken out for taxes and everything. It can be shocking. So understanding that but it's so incredibly empowering, Robbie, as you know, to be in charge of your own money. It's
And
so great.
it's a new world. It really is a new world that we need to venture into. And I'm just so happy you were here on Talking Live to share with our audience just the work that you're doing, the education that you're doing through your films. Where can people find you and find out more information about Savvy?
Yeah, so Finish Line Feature Films is my website, or they can just Google Robin Hauser. And I, we just finished the film, so we're shopping it around and seeing where it's going to end up. But some of my other films are on Amazon Prime and Apple TV, and so eventually it'll be accessible to everybody.
Well, I am thrilled. And again, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing the full film.
Robbie, thank you so much. What an honor. Thank you.